Hello. In this video, I want to talk about why I believe it is important that you study before you take the SAT. And of course, this would apply to any standardized test that's important to take, for example, the GRE or the ACT. But I'm assuming that anybody who's going to take the GRE already knows why it's very important to study for that test. So this little conversation will deal with studying for the SAT. I look at taking a test like the SAT as being to your mental faculties what running a 5-mile off the track race would be to your physical body. In both cases, the experience can be taxing, but in each situation, you can prepare. And if you prepare, you should most certainly be able to significantly increase your probability of performing or scoring well. Now, there are a few so-called facts that must be taken into account. You cannot begin to prepare for a 5-mile race 3 weeks ahead of time and have a good chance of performing well if you're not already physically fit. The few weeks of preparing for the 5-mile race are not intended to transform your body into a physically fit body, but rather to tone or condition your already relatively fit body for the real race. You might also pick up a few strategies along the way. How can I run the fastest? Do I want to run up the steep hill, or do I want to walk at a fast pace, right? How can I best conserve my energy? Those kind of questions. You should also probably run the race ahead of time, or at least be familiar with the various terrains upon which you must run. You might consider what type of running shoes are the most comfortable. So as you can see, there are many factors that may influence how you place. Thus, the preparation upon which you engage, while it may not be enough to cause you to actually win the race, to become in first place, it might help you, for example, to finish in the top 10% of those who are running. At least to come closer to winning than you otherwise would have if you hadn't prepared. Well, like this off-the-track race, the SAT can also be prepared for in the same way, because the same conditions hold true. You can prepare for the SAT test ahead of time. It's a predictable test. Now, you can't be a complete academic incompetent and expect to tone your mind to the necessary extent to obtain a high score. Studying for the SAT won't work wonders if you've been a complete academic slackard your entire life. But if your mind already understands a good amount of the material that's going to be on the SAT, for example, if you paid attention throughout your middle and high school classes, well, then a bit of scholastic toning or conditioning can go a long way toward improving your score. I mean, the SAT, right, like this off-the-track race, would be predictable, right? The directions and the type of problems will not change from one practice test to another. The time of the test and the scoring of the test, they don't change either. So it's advantageous for you to learn the directions for the SAT ahead of time, because that's going to save you valuable seconds when taking the SAT. And in addition, I mean, there are all these little tricks you can employ to increase your score. There are these certain areas, and on a test like the SAT, that the test makers they deliberately attempt to trick you into choosing an incorrect answer. But once you're aware of the specific tricks that the test makers have created to confuse you and to lower your score, you'll be able to, at least hopefully be able to overcome them on test day. You'll certainly be more prepared to overcome them on test day. And then everybody also, no matter how diligently you performed in school, everybody has a few gaps, right, in his or her mental knowledge. And preparing for the SAT can illuminate these gaps and then provide you with some areas in which to brush up your skills. It's like a 5-mile race. You're probably still going to make some mistakes on the SAT. You probably won't score 800 a section just by brushing up a little bit. But if your goal is just to perform your best on the SAT, you will have gone a long way toward achieving that objective. Well, the question that's often asked is, why does one want to score well in the SAT? I mean, I would think that's a pretty obvious question, but some people don't really see why it's important to try to score well on a test like the SAT. But I would argue this, that scoring well in the SAT can assist you in gaining admission to the college you most desire to attend. 2, it can increase your merit-based financial aid package. And 3, it can function as a means of determining whether you are exempt from certain classes. For example, an otherwise mandatory introductory college mathematics or English composition class. The second point is the point at which I want to focus the most attention, the point about increasing merit financial aid. Because many students, for one reason or another, they hate studying for the SAT, they fail to find studying for the SAT efficacious. But let's imagine a situation. Let me create a situation for you. Imagine that there exists a high school junior named John Doe, right? And John Doe desires to attend a Tier 1 liberal arts university. Now, John is not certain how he plans to pay for the exorbitant cost associated with attending such an institution. John's parents make a relatively modest combined salary of $75,000 per year. But they have a mortgage. They have many other expenses. So they're not going to be able to cover the full tuition, minus the grants that the government will be able to give John after he fills out his FAFSA, right? So John wants to attempt to maximize his merit-based scholarship opportunities. John has been a capable student in high school. He's in the top 5th of his high school class. He's taken a number of challenging honors classes. He's been involved in a number of school clubs. And John speculates that if he takes the SAT without studying, he will likely score slightly above 600 a section for a composite score of 1800 on the SAT. Now, this score, combined with John's academic record, the score of about 1800, may be sufficient, may be sufficiently high, because remember, John has a good academic record, a good extracurricular record. It may be sufficiently high for John to gain admission to the college of his choice, in which we'll say the average SAT score is roughly 600 or 640 a section, for an approximate composite score of, say, 1920. But even though John is likely to gain admission based upon this aggregate academic record, the SAT score he would obtain if he does not study may seriously limit the amount of merit-based financial aid that John obtains from the college he wishes to attend. But here's the key. John could perform better on the SAT than the 600 a section if he studied, even for a total of, say, 20 hours. And that might be broken down into 5 hours a week, right, in the 4 weeks leading up to when he officially takes the SAT. Likely, if John simply rearranges his schedule, maybe gets rid of the show he wanted to watch in the evenings on TV or something, he's going to be able to at least find 5 hours a week to devote to preparing for the SAT. Right. Saying that you don't have time to study for the SAT, for most students, that's just not true. You need to rearrange your schedule. But what could be the benefits of the studying for John, right? Well, if John devotes himself during these 20 hours, I mean like no text messaging, no browsing Facebook every 5 minutes, he might well improve his score to approximately 700 a section. Because think about it, John already possesses the raw academic ability to score 600 a section. Therefore, all John needs to do to increase substantially his score is to figure out how he is being tripped up on the few questions for which he is obtaining an incorrect answer. And once John masters these tricks, he should be able to avoid committing the same mistakes on test day. If John spends at least some of his studying time with another student, right, of similar academic ability, who is also studying for the SAT, the two individuals together may be able to provide each other with considerable assistance in understanding their errors and overcoming their weaknesses. And so the benefits of a score of 2100 on the SAT versus 1800 on the SAT is likely to be a pretty immense one. John suddenly appears to be an excellent student because his SAT score is pretty excellent, rather than just very good. And so the Tier 1 liberal arts college that John wishes to attend may increase the merit-based financial aid package they're willing to reward John by, let's say, $2,000 a year for a total over 4 years of $8,000. And if one performs just this basic mathematical computation, John has essentially spent 20 hours working at a job, right, a so-called job, studying for the SAT, that pays him $400 an hour, right? In the next video, I'm going to continue talking about why it's in your interest and why it's in John's interest to study for the SAT. Thank you for watching, and I hope you watch part 2.